All right, so we're going to start on our lesson for Wednesday, 4/29, 2020. So basically, we're going to continue on with transformations for our parabola or quadratic equations. So on our video that we did yesterday, we shifted our parabolas left or right, and we also shifted them up or down. So with what we're doing today, we're going to actually shift them left or right and up or down. So we're going to figure it out, our equation from that, okay? So the graph of f of x is a solid black graph below, so this solid line, which function represents the dotted graph. So if we look at this parabola, the first thing let's figure out over here is what is the vertex, all right? So our vertex on that is going to be 0, 0. That's our turnaround point, right, or our vertex. So 0, 0. What is the formula of the black parabola in the vertex form? So it's at 0, 0. So I know that, again, I have my vertex form here. I have x minus h. Our h is 0, so it's just x squared plus k. Our k is 0 as well, right? So this is just going to be f of x is equal to x squared, all right? And the way we can tell that we don't have an a in there is, 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 3 is 9, so we don't have any multiplier going on that. What is the vertex of the red dotted parabola? So let's take a look at this. So our red dotted parabola, this is our turnaround point, right? If we come around, we get down to this point, and then we start going up. So we're at -1, -2. All right, remember this is h, and this is k. All right, so if we look at our vertex form, next question is what is the formula of the red dotted parabola in vertex form? So now if I say, I'm just going to use g of x. So g of x is equal to our a. It's going to be 1. It didn't get, remember if our a is, it's at 1 initially. So if it gets larger than 1, it actually gets a narrower parabola. And that was a couple videos ago. And if we have less than 1, the closer we get to 0, the parabola gets wider and wider. So this is going to be the same one. It's just a is 1. We go x minus -1. All right. Squared plus -2. Okay. Let's put all those in parentheses. So when I do this out, x minus a -1 makes it x plus 1 squared -2. All right. And then it says, what is a transformation? So this went, and let me type this in. So basically we shifted to the left by 1, and we shifted down by 1. I'm sorry, by 2. Okay, so this told us we shifted left by 1, and this tells us we shifted down by 2. Okay, so that's what we would be looking for as far as for our transformation, and this would be a translation, right? So let's go down. I'm going to have you guys try this problem right here. I want you to answer the problems on the side. They'll be asked in Edpuzzle. You're going from the graph of x squared as a solid black graph below, which function represents the dotted graph. So you're going to go from here and then figure out what did it take? How far did he shift left or right? And how far did he shift up or down? Okay, so try that. All right, so our second example. So now this is where we don't have a lot of the word problems in on the regions. They're not going to give you the graph. You do have your graphing calculator at home right now. You do have Desmos, so you can easily go through and do the graphs for these, and that's probably the best thing to do, and then figure out what the translation is. but you can also do it from your equations, right? So compared to the graph, f of x is equal to x squared. The graph of g of x is equal to x minus 2 squared plus 3. Is the result of translating f of x 2 units up and 3 units right, 2 units down and 3 units up, 2 units right and 3 units up, or 2 units to the left and 3 units right? Okay, so they gave us all the options there. So let's see. So first thing, I like to just, go through and go, okay, f of x, what's my vertex for f of x? So again, if I look at this, it's just x squared. So that means my h was 0, my k is 0. Right, and in the a term or the a coefficient is a 1, so it's just 0, comma 0. And then it says, what's the vertex of our g of x? Right, so minus 2 is your h, all right, 2 is your h, and plus 3 is your k. So the vertex will be 2, comma 3. All right. Having trouble writing here. All right. So 2, comma 3 is our vertex for g of x. Okay. So what is the a term? So this is just a question we're just going to ask. So it's a positive one here, remains a positive one. So we know that we have a positive sign, and we know that it's going to continue being a happy face. It's going to be positive. It's going to be smiling. All right. So with that, all we got to do is go, okay, we know that our vertex form would be, if I said g of x, this is just extra. You really don't need to do this for the problem, but if I want to put it in this form, I'd go x, or actually they already gave it to us. Look at that. All right. So I know that I shifted 2, right? It's a positive 2, so I shifted 2 to the right. Okay. And then I went up by 3. It's a positive 3. So I shifted 2 to the right and shifted up by 3. Okay. I'll make this bigger. All right. So I shifted 2 to the right and shifted up by 3. A lot of times it might be easier just when you do these to go and take a look. I usually look at the k first and go, okay, I went from plus 0 to 3. So I know I shifted up by 3. So I want to find any ones that say I went 3 units up. So there's 3 units up, 3 units up. This is saying 3 units to the right, so I know 4 is out. I know 1's out, so I'm down between 2 and 3. Now I got to figure out, is it 2 units 2 units down and 3 units up, so this one doesn't make sense. 2 units right and 3 units up. Okay, so on this one, I know I got a positive 2, so I went to the right. Okay, so number 3 is going to be our answer. All right, let me just highlight that too. So 3 would be our answer. 2 units to the right, and it went up by 3. Okay, so now I want you to try the next problem on Edpuzzle. Again, I'm going to have you answer the questions to the right. Okay. Compared to the graph, f of x is equal to x minus 1 squared plus 1. The graph of g of x is equal to x minus 5 squared plus 4. Is the result of, what's the result of translating f of x? So on this one, remember your vertex form. Write out what your vertex is for both of these, and then figure out, again, the a term is positive. I just want you always asking that question. I put it here. We're not going to ask that one, but figure out, how do you get from here to there? All right. Now we're going to move on to our third problem. Okay. So this one is, again, all these are straight off the readings. I thought I'd run through them, give us the idea for the transformation of the quadratic equation. So in this one, it says Melissa graphed the equation y equals x squared. All right. And Dave graphed the equation y equals negative 3x squared on the same coordinate grid. What is the relationship between the graphs that Melissa and Dave drew? Now, if you want to do the graphs, definitely do the graphs. Punch that into your graphing calculator in Desmos, put y equals x squared, and then below that, y equals negative 3x squared. And that'll give you the picture if you want to figure it out that way. Completely acceptable to do it like that. But here they're going to, here what we want to do is just answer the questions again, right? We want to go, okay, the vertex of f of x, it's y equals x squared. So it goes 0, 0. The equation of y equals negative 3x squared. So again, 0, 0. That multiplier out front of that a coefficient has no impact on the vertex. So it's the same. But here's what is the a term? So the a term is negative, right? And let me type this in. Let's make that bigger. A coefficient is negative. So the parabola negative. So parabola points down. Okay. Or a coefficient, right? And it's that little a in front. It's a negative. A coefficient is negative, so parabola points down. And then the second thing that we have to remember is the closer, or as you go towards, can't spell, as you go towards 0 for the a coefficient, the parabola gets wider. Okay, so as you go towards 0 for the a coefficient, the parabola gets wider. Or the other way you can say it, as you go away from 0, right? The larger your a coefficient gets, the narrower your parabola will get. So I could write that as the a coefficient. I was going to mess it up. All right, I missed an I. As the a coefficient gets larger, the parabola gets narrower. Okay. So on this, we go from a +1 to a -3. So we know that we're going to get, let me type this in too. So we got two questions here. Let me make this big enough so you can see it. So we go from +1 to -3. Okay. So when we do that, we know that the new parabola is down, and we know that 1 to 3 means the parabola gets narrower. And if I wanted to jump on Desmos real quick, so let's just take a look. So I did it right here. So x squared, -3x squared. But let me just, if I took the negative sign out, just to show you how much narrower it is. So the red is x squared, and you can see that over here. The red is x squared. The blue is 3x squared. So again, as that number gets larger, if I wanted to go 9x squared, we did this before in another video, 9x squared is going to be narrower. As that a coefficient gets larger, it gets narrower, okay? As soon as I add that negative, though, it's a reflection over the x-axis. Now it's pointing down, okay? All right, so now what I want you to do, so if we look at this, and we look at, for this one, what's the answer? Dave's graph is wider. Nope, it's not going to be wider. It's going to be narrower. Dave's graph is narrower. Good. This one says it's wider, so we can eliminate 3. We can eliminate 1. Dave's graph is narrower, so it's either 2 or 4. It's narrower and opens in the opposite direction from Melissa's graph. So Melissa's graph was the positive x squared, where Dave's graph is narrower. It's 3 units to the left of Melissa's graph. So it's not this one, right? So it's going to be answer 2 is the one that is the correct answer. Okay, so answer 2. The graph is narrower and it opens in the opposite direction. Melissa's pointing up. Dave's graph points down. All right, so now I want you to try one of these on your own. Again, you have the graph, and on this one they didn't use a number for the coefficient. They used the variable. So they just said the graph of the equation y equals ax squared is shown below if a is multiplied by a negative 1/2. So think about it. If this was a 1, if a was a 1, and then you multiplied by a negative 1/2, it's going to be a negative 1, right? Or negative 1/2. So use that to figure out what your answer would be, okay? So then let me just write that in. So if you multiplied that, think of it this way. You're going to end up with a negative 1/2 ax squared. So that a you can sort of eliminate in a way. You can just be like, okay, it's just negative 1/2 x squared versus x squared. All right, so try that out. And then on our last one, I am just going to combine everything together. This is just a challenge question. See how you do on it. So this is adding everything together. So it's got, compared to the graph of f of x, I'm not going to run through this one. I'm just going to have you guys answer it, see how you do, and then we'll decide what we work on for Friday. F of x is equal to x minus 2 squared plus 2. The graph of g of x is equal to negative 2, x minus 6 squared plus 7. So it's asking, is the result of f of